Institute. Sir has more than 15 years of teaching, research, and industrial experience. He has published 50 research papers and articles in international and national referred journals and conferences. He has also published a patent in 2019. So, Sir is having a vast experience, and as I mentioned that he has more specialization in application of concrete technology in structural applications. So obviously sir is having deep knowledge of concrete and its effective utilization. So as we discussed in yesterday's sessions also, that majority of our sessions that we have kept application based. So sir will be taking few of the theoretical concepts and how those concepts are effectively utilized in terms of some practical applications. So I'm sure that this session is going to be very much helpful to gain additional knowledge from Dev sir. So with this, I will request Dev sir to take over the charge of this session.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
So, good morning, everyone.
Yes. Good morning, sir. Yeah.
I am audible, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is well audible.
And presentation is in full screen and changing.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So let us start with the topic. Today's topic, which I just want to share with all of you, is increasing earthquake resistance of concrete structures. Now, all of us who know regarding earthquake, they know that whenever we talk about earthquake, there is an aspect that is ductility. A material which is ductile can take care of forces which are acting upon the structure at the time of earthquake. We all know that concrete is a brittle material. Now, that itself, there are two contradictory statements. Yes. So we are talking about ductility and we are talking about brittleness of concrete. So we will try to understand this very critical aspect. Unless this aspect is understood by all of us, we may design the structure as earthquake resistant structure, but at the end it will not serve the purpose because required ductility is not there in case of concrete. So that is what is important point whenever we are talking about earthquake resisting structures. This is mandatory. These are actually mandatory slides from our institute. So I represent NIT Raipur, which is an institute of national importance and located at Raipur, that is the capital city of Chhattisgarh. We are very well connected, as can be seen from the slide. We have 12 programs in BTech, we have MTech programs, we have PhD students and all. The students or whoever is interested in admission, so they can just contact our Dean Academics. All the informations are available on the website, that is nitrr.ac.in. We also have admissions to the foreign nationals. So for that as well, you can contact either Dean Academics or our website. So this is, I should say, brief introduction and information regarding my institute. So in today's presentation, what we will do is, we will first try to understand lessons which we can learn from the previous earthquakes. So what has happened in previous earthquakes, and if I want to avoid that in future, what should I do? Philosophy and principles of earthquake resistant design. So there is some philosophy whenever we talk about earthquake resisting design. So we will try to understand that in not much detail, just briefly, and then try to apply the same to the concrete technology, or concrete, I should say. Importance of ductility of concrete. Then how to make good concrete. A good concrete, if we are able to make, it will become ductile in combination with the steel. Required properties of good concrete. Useful types of concrete. So there are certain types of concrete which are considered to be more useful in case of earthquake resistance. So those types of concretes we will discuss, and finally we will conclude regarding the topic. In between presentation, if anyone wish, you can definitely ask questions. Means I don't know what is the rule from the institute or organizers, but I generally prefer, if there is any doubt, we can discuss that at the same point, or some time will be given at the end to discuss all that. So what are the lessons from previous earthquakes? Generally, the failure member for a structure during the earthquake is column or beam. So these are two very important structures, or I should say structural components of a building, and they are seen to fail during the earthquake. Concrete actually separates from the reinforcement. This is one of the biggest issue. So understand one, means this thing is understood by everyone, that RCC will work only if reinforcement and concrete will work together, because both these materials, they actually complement each other. Concrete is weak in tension, so reinforcement complements. Reinforcement is ductile, it buckles. So whenever there is rigidity required, so concrete will provide that rigidity, that stiffness to the reinforcement. So this is what is the important concept. If we separate the two at any junction, they become the weakest zone. So if concrete is not well supported by reinforcement, cracking will happen, spalling will happen, and finally structure will fail. On the other hand, if reinforcement is not properly bonded with the concrete, it may actually lose its strength. It may become very ductile, it may buckle, and at the end it may fall. The column may be damaged by cracking or buckling due to excessive bending combined with dead load. Buckling of columns are significant when the columns are slender, and that is why generally it is not anyway mandatory, but generally in case of earthquake designs, it is recommended that column width should not be less than 300. It is not a compulsion. Buckling of columns are significant when the columns are slender and the spacing of the stirrups in the column is large. So always it is recommended that you should have lowest possible spacing between the stirrups. When we want to increase the earthquake carrying capacity of the columns, spacing of stirrups should be as low as possible. So lot of times what people do, they take 10 mm diameter stirrups in place of 8, and the spacing is very high. So in that case, it is not a good strategy, I should say, from earthquake point of view. Severe cracks occur near the rigid joints of frame due to shearing action, which may lead to complete collapse. So here, always remember joints, that is column and beam joint, which is most vulnerable joint in the structure, and lot of failures are seen in the past at the same location, and there are certain concrete related reasons for that I will be discussing in coming slides. Building made with heavy material such as stone masonry generally fail because it attracts inertia proportional to the mass of the structure. So there is a need to reduce the mass of the structure. Now, when we move from, now again, this is just for approximation or for example, I am telling, if we move from M20 grade concrete to M40 grade concrete, it may not happen that the column or structural sizes will reduce to half, but definitely this is very useful in reducing the sizes of the various sections. So automatically mass will reduce, and that will be helpful in making the concrete more sustainable for the earthquakes. Lighter building materials such as wood, bamboo, or lightweight concrete are most suitable for earthquake resisting construction, which have shown good performance during earthquakes. Today we are talking about very high rise buildings, maybe 10 floors or more. So in that case, all these lightweight materials may not be useful. So there the solution is you can use a very high strength concrete, so that because of high strength, it will have lower dimensions, and that is why automatically mass will reduce. So that is one of the possibility. Poor quality of materials having less tensile, shear, compressive strength, and low modulus of elasticity cause heavy damage to the buildings. So M20 grade concrete, for example, will always be poor in comparison to M30 or M40 grade concrete. So it doesn't mean that you should use from that point of view M100 concrete, but the only suggestion is that whatever is best possible grade of concrete possible to produce at the site, if we use it, it will be useful to make concrete or RCC building earthquake resistant. Buildings made of poor quality brick and unreinforced construction or poor quality of reinforced concrete will show poor performance. So this is M15 is particularly written because that is what IS code does not allow. But as I said, it is always better to go for higher and higher grade of concrete if it is possible at the sites. Richer concrete withstood the earthquakes better. Conventional earthquake resistant design of a reinforced concrete building depends on its basic element called ductility. So earlier I was talking about this important aspect. So I also discussed that concrete is a brittle material, but here we are talking about ductility. So how these things are possible? So the simple thing to remember always is concrete will become ductile, or ductility of concrete will be increased if it has a very good bond with the reinforcement. Now here, if in one line I have to say, the bond has to be improved between reinforcement and concrete. A good bond is not possible if concrete quality is bad. Then there are certain aspects like bond length and all that. So I'm not going to get into that. But if we are able to produce a good concrete, which will hold good onto the reinforcement, our most important purpose is served. So as previously I discussed that generally columns or beams will fail. Yes, so let us try to understand why columns damage or fail. Lack of confinement. So stirrups you have to provide at a lower distance, whatever lower is possible within the permissible limits. Large tie spacing, insufficient splices length. So splicing sometimes means at sites it is you have to provide, but then you have to take proper precautions. Whatever bond length is required, If welding is to be done, then proper welding length has to be there. So all these things we must check. Inadequate splicing at the same section. Generally at site, what we find is all the reinforcement is spliced at the same location. सारे के सारे बार लेटेस्ट से अगर 3 मीटर के हैं तो सारे के सारे बार 3 मीटर पे ही उसको एडिशनल बार हम वेल्ड करते हैं. This is something which is not right. We have to make judicious lengths so that at least 50% of the bars continue at the any point of time. Poor concrete quality, so my main focus will be on this aspect. Less than full height masonry infill options. So always from earthquake point of view, we should have full height masonry infills with, there are other precautions as well related to the masonry and earthquake. A combination of many of the above compounded with vertical and geometrical irregularities. Buildings which we make today, they are irregular in case of geometry, vertically or horizontally or any other way. So irregular buildings, they are not actually safe for earthquakes. Over the years, it is seen a lot of times government buildings are actually criticized by few people that they are very monotonous, they are very, I should say, plain, or they are not having good architecture and all that. But over the years, it is seen that these buildings, because they are regular, vertically, horizontally, in all directions, they are very much regular. They are just similar blocks placed everywhere. So because of that regularity, actually they perform very well under the earthquakes. So though this is not the topic, so I will not get much deeper into this. Now these are actually the photographs taken from some resources. So here what we see is columns have failed because of buckling. But here the most important thing to observe is within this location we are not able to see required number of stirrups. So why this has happened? The column as such may be very, very good. With the support of concrete, it was performing well under the dead load and live load. But as soon as there was earthquake, and because stirrups were not there, and as I said, when earthquake forces are actually there on the structure, concrete will fall or concrete will fall down, means cover will fall. Now when cover falls, if there is some stirrup or ring available at that location, it may still hold the vertical reinforcement. But if stirrups are not there or if rings are not there, so in that case what will happen is the column will fail at such location. And today we are talking about a structure wherein every individual member is connected to rest of the structure. So as soon as at one location there is some failure, it is possible that the total load sharing of the structure may not work properly and the whole structure may fail. So that is why we should be very, very particular about stirrups and the quality of concrete. So if both of the things are taken care of, there are less chances that such kind of failures will happen in earthquake. So what is the mechanism of column failure? When a column is subject to seismic motion, its concrete begins to disintegrate. So concrete, as I said, is not very ductile. So as soon as there are in concrete, invariably there are internal cracks due to shrinkage. So these cracks, whenever there is, I should say, earthquake, so these cracks will open up and that will remove some of the concrete from the core of the column, disintegrate that. So bond between reinforcement and concrete will reduce and that will make concrete again brittle in nature. And then rest of the things what we have seen in the previous slide, all these things, at the end of the day, this will happen. Concrete begins to disintegrate and the load carried by concrete shifts to its longitudinal reinforcement. So longitudinal reinforcement is only able to take the load when it is confined by the concrete and reinforcement. But if both of them are not existing, then column may fail. This additional load causes buckling of longitudinal reinforcement, and whenever there is buckling, column becomes inefficient to take the load. As a result, the column shortens and loses its ability to carry even the gravity load. So generally, means if there are chances or knowledge about the possible earthquake, or during initial I should say warnings, building may be evacuated, so only dead load will exist, but still columns are not able to take the only dead load which is existing because of this reason. So what is the reason? Insufficient confinement in plastic hinge region due to smaller number of ties and poor concrete. So our main focus whenever we are talking about earthquake resistant design, we have to focus on ductile detailing, as well as we have to focus on the concrete quality. A earthquake resistant structure, now this is the extreme case which rarely we will see, but if we visit at a location where a very multi-storied building with earthquake in, let us say, a very critical zone 4 or 5, so you will find the reinforcement is very high. And again, we all know that reinforcement from beams is carried into the reinforcement in the column, yes, for proper bonding and anchorage. So this type of situation can be very common in high earthquake zones with high rise buildings. Now in this case, it is a difficult task for anyone to compact the concrete. So if we all look at it, there is not even 40 mm space between the reinforcement which is available. And we all know that a needle vibrator is having a needle of 40 mm, and for its vibration it will need around 30 mm extra, 20 to 30 mm. So at least 60 mm spacing has to be there for a needle vibrator to vibrate the concrete. Now this is most critical zone as far as earthquake resistance is concerned. And what is happening, even if I know that it has to be properly compacted, I may not be in a position to compact that because of non-availability of required space between the reinforcement. So what it will result? It will automatically degrade the bond between concrete and reinforcement. When vibrations are not there, there will be a lot of voids, honeycombing, and honeycombing and voids will automatically result into poor bond between reinforcement and concrete. So these kind of situations always exist at the sites, and if such situations are there, the end result is this. If you visit a site where after the earthquake some damages are seen, so you will find the beam and column joint as most vulnerable, and reason is what I have just now shown. Over reinforcement, there is higher reinforcement for taking the earthquake forces in the columns, in the beams, and the beam reinforcement is actually taken into the column for anchorage. So that makes beam column joint most vulnerable. So that is why we have to be very, or I should say most careful while casting a beam column joint. Beam column joints are critical elements in frame structures and are subject to high shear and bond slip deformation under earthquake loading. So this is what is possible in case of a beam column joint. Beam column joints have very close spacing between reinforcement as there exists column and beam reinforcement. So this is the critical point we always have to consider. So from this point of view, let us say if in place of 20 mm diameter bars, I can use 25 mm bars, that will be better. Because what it will do is it will reduce the congestion which is possible at the beam and column joint. So from ductility point of view, yes, we should have more and more number of bars, but from compaction point of view, we should be at least able to maintain a distance between the bars of at least 60 mm. Again, at initial slides, I discussed this that 200 mm width of column should be avoided. One of the reason for that is this as well. On 200 mm width column, if we provide 3 bars of let us say 25 mm diameter, then sufficient space will not be available for vibrator to vibrate the concrete. So such kind of difficulties we always face, and if we neglect this, these are going to be disastrous from the earthquake point of view. Due to lesser spacing, it becomes very difficult to compact concrete properly. If proper precautions are not taken, honeycombing and voids will exist at beam column joint. So if honeycombing and voids are there, bond is going to suffer, and if bond is not there, concrete will not become ductile. So ductility of concrete will be affected, and that will actually make concrete very, very vulnerable to the earthquake. This will make beam column joint weak. This may be a common cause of failure of beam column joints. Okay, now here what we can do is, though this from the site person's point of view, this looks to be very weird, means these are the comments which I have received during various presentations, that if the beam column joint is having very less spacing of the reinforcement, we should switch to a concrete with only 10 mm aggregates, coarse aggregates. Because what is the common practice which we follow at the site? Same concrete is used for all the structures, let it be columns, beams, or slabs. Yes, yeah, I am not saying that this is not possible. Yes, this is possible if the reinforcement spacing is sufficient. If it is more than 60 or 70 mm, it's okay. You can use the 20 mm aggregate as well. But if you find that the spacing is very less, you should generally go for 10 mm aggregates, because the chances of 10 mm aggregates compacting by itself are more in comparison to 20. So whenever we are pouring concrete from a height, what will happen is segregation and bleeding may happen. And if we are not able to properly compact it, it will be disturbing the structure. So that is something which is recommended, but generally not followed at the site. We use only 10 mm aggregates for producing concrete at the beam column joint. The most common modes of failure in beam column joint are as follows. Most common failures observed in exterior joints are due to either high shear or bond. So if anchorage is not there properly, then the bond means the joint will fail under severe earthquakes. plastic hinges are formed in the beams at the column face. As a result, crack develop throughout the beam depth. So if there is cracking, it means the column or the reinforcement confinement is lost. And when the reinforcement is not confined, concrete is not connected with the reinforcement, failures can happen. Bond deterioration near the face of column causes propagation of beam reinforcement, yielding in the joint and a shortening of the bar length available for force transfer by bond, causing horizontal bar slippage in the joint. So if the reinforcement is not properly bonded, it will slip, and if the reinforcement slips, automatically we can say that the joint is going to fail, and final result, extreme result, can be the structure as well can fail. In the interior joint, the beam reinforcement at both the column faces undergoes different stress condition, that is compression and tension, because of opposite signs of seismic bending moments, resulting in failure of joint core. So in internal, there are opposing movements at the same location. So that makes concrete to crack or fall. And again, as concrete falls, reinforcement becomes weak. Inadequate anchorage of flexural steel in beams, lack of transverse reinforcement, and poor bond between reinforcement and concrete. So all this will result into the failure of column joint. So that is why we have to be again very, very careful. So this is what I have already shown. So this is, here you can see in the photograph, there are three, in left photograph, there are three beam column joints which we are able to see, and all of them have failed. You can say there is no crack in the slab, but the main failure has occurred at the beam and column joint. So what is the philosophy and principle of earthquake resistant design? Earthquake results in very high lateral forces on the structure. It will be uneconomical to design all the buildings for such high earthquake forces. So we are not able to design for an earthquake which has a probability of, let us say, 100 years. So we cannot design it for that. So what it means is, structures may have certain failures or they may have very severe cracking, but at the end of the day they should not lose their stability. So that is what is important. And as earthquakes are rare events, the codes outline the philosophy of earthquake resistant design, that the building should not have any significant structural damage under moderate earthquakes, which are relatively frequent. So moderate earthquakes, they are relatively frequent, and for them only we will design. In the severe earthquake, it is possible that building may not be able to survive those earthquakes. On the other hand, under a major earthquake, which is rare, average return period being 1000 years or more, the building may undergo severe damage, but it should not collapse in any case, as collapse results in large scale loss of life. Yes, so that is what we have to understand. Under moderate earthquakes, which are common or frequent, I should say, the building should be able to survive, or building should have very small damages which can be repaired and continued for the further life. But in case of severe earthquake, loss of life should not happen. To avoid collapse of buildings during earthquakes, there are four basic principles. First, reduced mass. So we have to reduce the mass. So I had discussed certain points. We can use some lightweight materials like bamboo and all, but these are not suitable for high-rise buildings. So one way is we can use a very high strength concrete because that will reduce the mass when compared to equivalent building with a lower strength concrete. Buildings should have symmetry and continuity of construction. So building should be symmetrical, there should be continuity. There is another important aspect, that is strength and overstrength. We have to design building with overstrength. Now this is an aspect which most of the economists will not like. They will say, why should there be overstrength? But over the years, it is seen that with factor of safety or maintenance of proper factor of safety, whatever overstrength is provided in the building, that actually makes the building survive severe earthquakes. In a lot of cases, what people do, they say that we know earthquake is not going to occur, and whatever, let us say, reinforcement is provided, they will provide 70% of it or 80% of it, saying that we don't have to bother about earthquake. But that additional 20% as per the design can be a savior for the earthquake. So overstrength is very, very important whenever we are designing for the earthquake. And ductility of structure. So there are details regarding the ductility or ductile design, and for making concrete and RCs, means reinforcement ductile, we have to have a proper bond and good quality of concrete. Ductility of concrete can also be increased by fibers. So use of fibers is a very advantageous point from the earthquake point of view, because generally what will happen is, even if let us say I am having a reinforcement spacing of 100 mm by 100 mm, the concrete between that 100 mm and 100 mm reinforcement is still brittle. It is still vulnerable to earthquake. So if we are able to add fibers into all such regions, so it will make even the concrete which is far away from the reinforcement to have some ductility, and because of that earthquake resistance will increase a lot for the concrete. So fiber reinforced concrete from this point of view is very, very good. Also self compacting concrete, the beam column joint which I have shown, if we are able to use self compacting concrete at such location, it will greatly improve the bond between the reinforcement and concrete. And because of that, actually what will happen is the concrete will become ductile, have good bond, and survive the earthquakes. There are functional limits on reduction of mass, but it is obvious that lightweight concrete or high strength concrete will attract less force compared to heavy structure. High strength concrete will require lower member sizes and attract less force compared to a heavy structure. Now, whenever we talk about high strength concrete, there is a possibility of improvement of interfacial transition zone as well. So interfacial transition zone is dependent on the water cement ratio which is used, and for high strength concrete generally water cement ratio is less. So with less water cement ratio, ITZ improves, with proper workability bond improves, and because of that the structure becomes safer. Seismic performance of a symmetric and regular structure has been observed to be much better than the asymmetric and irregular structure. So that is where I gave you an example of government buildings. So government buildings being symmetric and regular, they generally suffer a lower damage during the earthquakes. So what is the importance of ductility in earthquake design? The ductility is defined as the ratio of the maximum displacement to the yield displacement. Larger is the capacity of building to deform after yielding without collapse. Larger is the ductility of the building. Now, here we are talking about the ductility of a building, but the same ductility principle will apply to concrete, which is there between, let us say, 100 mm by 100 mm reinforcement. So there the failure may start. So as a whole, building can be ductile, but the concrete which is between the reinforcement, that is most vulnerable, and that is not able to show much ductility unless fibers are added to it. This ductility is very important in loss of energy under cyclic loading such as earthquake loading. So ductility becomes a major or deciding factor, I should say, in earthquake resisting design. So how we can make reinforced concrete buildings more ductile? So as we all know, concrete is very brittle and it falls suddenly when subjected to load. Concrete can be made ductile when confined by reinforcement. So lower the spacing of reinforcement, it is better. But again, as I said, lower does not mean 50 mm because there it is not possible to have proper vibration and compaction of concrete. So up to 70 mm, whatever spacing you are able to provide, that is very good for concrete and it should be provided. Concrete can also be made ductile by using small fibers as reinforcement. So in future, I will show how exactly the performance of fiber reinforced concrete is far better in comparison to the normal concrete. It is well known that confinement not only increases the strength of concrete, but it tremendously increases the ductility of concrete. So here strength, whatever strength is required, that is already provided, but we also need ductility. So with proper spacing of reinforcement, we are able to have a ductile concrete. High strength is termed as over strength and it is kept as reserve strength in case of gravity and wind load. So whenever means if we design a structure, let us say without earthquake and with earthquake. So what we find, there is a substantial difference in the design of the structure. Now this is what we call as over strength. If we provide this over strength, even if we know that there are very less chances of earthquake, this over strength will be very, very useful whenever there is earthquake. In case of earthquake load, this strength is also utilized to resist the earthquake forces. So our building must have over strength. In fact, the forces resulting from the earthquakes are much larger than the actual strength of members, and members yield under such forces. So as I said, in extreme cases, the earthquake forces can be even more in comparison to what strength we have designed the concrete for or RCC for. But our focus there is that loss of life should not be there. Even if there is damage to the building, it is okay. So what precautions we should take? Congestion of reinforcement at joint should be avoided. So that is why from congestion point of view, it is preferred that you use higher diameter bar in place of lower diameter bar. Compaction of concrete at joints is a difficult task, and honeycombed and tracked concrete at joints is quite common. So honeycombing at the joints, lot of us know that the shutters at the sides are generally removed at night, and we all know why. Generally these joints are vulnerable to honeycombing, and honeycombing is very easily visible during the day period. So just to avoid that, shutters are removed in the evening or night, and then immediately a rich mortar is placed over there to hide that honeycomb. So this is about the actual structure. So if we want that this should not happen, we have to take proper precautions. Special care should be taken to compact concrete at joints, as joints are the highly stressed parts of a building. Again, we have in brief earthquake philosophy, we have seen that joints are most vulnerable parts. So that is why if we want that the structure should be stable under earthquake, the joints have to be very, very good. This is also a very, very important aspect from earthquake point of view. Concreting should not be done in hot weather, because if concreting is done in hot weather, shrinkage cracks will be created, and shrinkage cracks are actually the starting point from where concrete starts to, I should say, debond from the reinforcement. So that is why if we are able to avoid this, we will have a very good bond between normal concrete and reinforcement. Maximum size of coarse aggregate used for making concrete should be 5 mm less than clear spacing between the reinforcement at the joint. This is also important. So sometimes if you again remember the photograph which I have shown with extreme reinforcement, there even spacing of 20 mm was not available at certain locations. So what will happen is the coarse aggregates will not be able to reach to the core of the column or beam joint. So that kind of situation should never be there. We should have sufficient spacing between the reinforcement to pass 20 mm aggregate and also to compact the concrete. Fibers should be used at least for the casting of beam column joint. Again, this means people don't like this, but this is true that if we are able to use fibers at the time of beam column joint casting, it will reduce the shrinkage cracks and it will make the beam column joint to be very, very ductile. So that is the beneficial part. So now let us come to some other, or I should say advanced topics of concrete, which also affect the bond between reinforcement and concrete. So general definition of concrete is known to everyone, but the negative point of this definition is everyone feels that making concrete is very simple, and that is why we are expert to make the concrete. Yes, so that is one of the issue with the first definition. So if we are actually having this thing in our mind that making concrete is very simple, we will not be able to produce a very good quality concrete which will have good bond, and that is why it will become ductile. Now there is an advanced definition. Concrete is a heterogeneous material and consists of separate phases like hydrated cement paste, transition zone, and aggregates. Now here, this transition zone is something which becomes a very critical part in case of earthquake resistant design. Transition zone, if I say in simple words, it is the bond between coarse aggregate and the mortar. So if this bond is better, concrete is going to perform better in case of the earthquake. If this bond is not good, concrete will fail at a lower strength and it will have poor bond with the reinforcement. So this is a representation of what is interfacial transition zone. So here what we are able to see is on the right hand side, that is bulk cement paste. Now that cement paste also includes the fine aggregates. So we can call it as a mortar. So mortar is there, and on the left hand side we can see the aggregate. So this is coarse aggregate. So between these two, if the bond is good, concrete is said to have good strength against earthquakes. And if between these two the bond is not very good, automatically concrete will become less ductile, it will have a poor bond, and because of that the structure as a whole is not having required ductility. A lot of people at the site, they are obsessed with high workability. Always whenever I discuss with the people at the site, they talk about workability in excess of 100 mm slump. Now I am not saying that it is wrong or something. What I am saying is we have to understand is that if we are talking about a high workability, the chances of bleeding and segregation will increase. Now, when bleeding and segregation will increase, it will reduce the quality of concrete. It will reduce the bond between the reinforcement and concrete. And at the end, concrete becomes vulnerable to the earthquake. Now, in this figure or photograph, there is a representation that where bleeding water actually stops. So here what is happening, because of bleeding, it may be because of higher vibration, it may be because of poor concrete mix design or whatever other reason. So water, when it bleeds, it has a tendency to come on the top of the concrete. Now the water which comes to the top of the concrete is less actually dangerous for a structure, because shortly it will be evaporated and it will not have much effect in the concrete. But the concrete which is stuck below the coarse aggregates or which is stuck below the reinforcement, that is most dangerous. Now what that does, it will increase the water cement ratio at a particular location. We always wonder, when with all precautions we make concrete cubes, let us say 3 concrete cubes or 6 concrete cubes, and we test it at the same time, though all the cubes are produced with similar precautions, similar care and all, but we have a concrete strength variation of up to 15%. So this is something which is actually not acceptable by us, because we say that I have done everything right, everything similar for all the cubes. But there, one of the issue can be uneven water cement ratio throughout the concrete. Now, why this uneven water cement ratio will be there? It is because of this internal bleeding and stoppage of water at certain locations because of the coarse aggregates, or in case of RCC because of the reinforcement as well. So here, why I generally do not recommend slump value to be more than 100 for normal concretes. Now this does not include the self-compacting concrete, because that is a totally different concept. When we are designing normal concrete or pumpable concrete, if workability is very high with a slight variation in the input materials, the bleeding will increase, and that will make ITZ, that is the bond between the coarse aggregate and cement mortar, or bond between the concrete and the reinforcement, to be weak. What is the reason for weakness? Reason for weakness is high water cement ratio close to this, maybe coarse aggregate of bigger size and reinforcement. So if that happens, that is going to cause a lot of damage during the earthquake. So it is always recommended that have a slump value somewhere in the range of 75 to 100, provide proper compaction so that bleeding will not happen. So we must avoid the bleeding in the concrete. So these are the very basic things. So I will not get into much of these details, but we have to avoid segregation and bleeding. That you have to always remember if we have to improve the quality of concrete. Again, it is important to accurately describe what the concrete is to be used for and how it will be placed. So if I am concreting for slab, there is no need of even 100 mm slump value. I can do it with maybe 50 mm slump. So in this way, we have to first understand for what I am making this concrete, and then according to that, I should adjust the workability of concrete. Higher than required workability is very, very dangerous from the earthquake point of view. And what is the reason? It is the bleeding. If bleeding happens, concrete quality deteriorates. So what are the factors? Lesser and lesser water is generally recommended because water bleeds, and the bleeding, as I said, is not very good for concrete. Excuse me. In mixed proportion, we should be very, very careful about what surface area is available in the concrete. Now, if quantity of fine aggregate reduces to a great extent, it will lead to bleeding. Also, it will lead to poor bond between the concrete and reinforcement. So actually, we are not able to have very high quantity of cementitious material. That is because of the cost as well as shrinkage. Yes. So if we want to improve the bond between concrete and reinforcement, we need to have a good quantity of fine aggregate, because with that surface area, fine aggregate will be able to hold the reinforcement and make RCC a ductile material. Always we should have a focus on the surface area of all the ingredients. Surface area should not be very less. If it is very less, concrete will start bleeding. If it is very high, concrete will become very, very dry, affecting the workability of concrete. Mixing procedure, we must use only the good quality mixers for mixing of concrete. Bond is also very much dependent on the packing of all the materials. If the all materials are packed well, it will have a very good bond with the reinforcement. So if we use graded aggregates, that is having various sizes, that is very good from bond point of view. If I am using only 20 mm aggregate and sand, which is a very common practice at a lot of sites, I should say smaller sites with local contractors. So in that case, it is not going to help at all. It will have a very poor bond with the reinforcement, and that will lead to failure during the earthquake. Again, this is, we generally use angular aggregates. In India, we do not have cubical aggregates. Yes, so if I discuss about this, contractors say, sir, ye to possible hi nahi hai. Yes, I know in India we don't get cubical type of aggregates, but they are the most desired type of aggregates which we should use. So they will improve the workability, they will also improve the strength of concrete, and hence they are actually recommended for earthquake resistant design. So all these things I have discussed. Good grading of aggregate has to be there. Super plasticizer or hyper plasticizer has to be used because they are able to provide high workability with low water cement ratio. So from earthquake point of view, lower the water cement ratio, it is better, and moderate workability it is required. So super plasticizers must be used for that. So this is the mechanism how super plasticizer works. Again, as I said, high strength concretes are advisable in case of the earthquake resisting design because they have lower mass and they also have a very good bond with the reinforcement. And as we all know, the flexural strength of concrete is around 10% of its compressive strength. So if we keep on increasing the compressive strength of concrete, automatically flexural strength will also improve, and that will make concrete more ductile. Lower and lower water cement ratio, whatever is there within the permissible limits, that is very useful, because if we use higher water cement ratio, interfacial transition zone actually deteriorates, and that actually also deteriorates the bond between the concrete and the reinforcement. From earthquake point of view, one of the very important point to remember is we should have very good curing of concrete, because curing is directly affecting the cracks which are produced in the concrete. At a lot of sites, what I have seen is curing is the most neglected part. When curing is neglected, it results into internal as well as surface cracks. And all these cracks are very dangerous from the earthquake point of view. So if we want to make a concrete to have earthquake resistance, curing becomes most important. There are certain notions that curing should start after 24 hours, something like that, which contractor tells. This is absolutely wrong. As soon as final set has happened, with some precautions. Precaution in the sense, you should not have a very big force of water on the surface of concrete, otherwise it will make some marks on the surface. But with very slow pace, we can use concrete curing after final setting of the cement. So around, means if we are using super plasticizer, concrete should set in, let us say, 6 to 8 hours. After that, we can definitely start curing of the concrete. So if we are able to control the cracks in concrete, we may not be able to see that benefit in terms of strength. Generally, all the contractors or even owners are only focused on the strength of concrete. But if you want to have earthquake resistance, very good curing of concrete for a longer period, maybe even after 14 days, if you cure the concrete, it is going to improve the earthquake resistance of concrete. Self-compacting concrete. I just discussed about difficulties in compacting the concrete at the beam column joint. So these are very real, and those who have worked with very high rise and earthquake resisting buildings, so they understand that it is very difficult to compact the concrete in the columns and column beam joints. So at such locations, if we use the self-compacting concrete, it will have a very good bond, and that is why it will make the concrete very, very ductile. One of the benefit is it will save the labor. Now, in lot of structures, what is seen is labor are very efficient during the first half of the concreting. Let us say they start the day at 10. So up to around 1 to 2 p.m., they will be very efficient. They will do their work very well. But in the second half, they may not have the same energy to compact the concrete. And that is why a lot of means we visit to a lot of sites, and what we find is for the same slab or for the same column, let us say one portion of that is very, very good, and some other portion of that becomes very, very weak or poor. So what can be one of the reason? One of the reason can be poor compaction of concrete by the laborer. So in second half, when they are tired, when they means are not able to focus completely, so they will actually compact the concrete poorly, and that will result in poor performance of concrete under earthquake. So in all such situations, self-compacting concrete will be very, very useful. Lightweight concretes, again, this is not possible for very high-rise buildings, but if we are able to produce lightweight concrete, because the mass of concrete is less, we will, or the structure will attract lower earthquake force, and because of that, it may remain safe during the earthquake. So lightweight concrete with lightweight materials is a possible option for earthquake resisting buildings. The most important material which is actually suggested for the earthquake resistance is fiber reinforced concrete. Now fiber has multiple benefit out, all of us know about that, but fiber is not a very popular material for construction. The only reason in that case is cost of fiber is higher. Addition of fiber will actually increase the cost of concrete by around 10%. Now, means according to what dose you are using, if the dose is higher, it may even go further to 20 or 25%. But at moderate dose, we may have around 10% increase in the cost of concrete. And that is why people are reluctant to use fibers in the concrete construction. Another issue with the fibers is it is very difficult to disperse. The performance of concrete will improve if the fibers are very well dispersed within the concrete. And for proper dispersion of fibers in the concrete, lot of efforts are required because fibers are very difficult to separate. Yes, the way they are produced, they are provided in the at the site and all. So it is very difficult to distribute them evenly in the concrete. So from that point of view, people or contractors are not very, I should say, interested in using the fibers in the concrete. But if we make this habit that at least for beam column joint, which is a very critical section of the total RCC building, we may use certain fibers to some quantity. It may be moderate quantity, but it will make concrete within the reinforcement also to be sufficiently ductile. So here again, understand one thing, we may not get the benefit or much benefit in terms of the increase in the strength of concrete, yes, which is generally desired by the contractors, but definitely ductility of the concrete will be improved, and that will improve the performance of the concrete. So the most important advantage of fiber is better ductility, and that is what is most required in case of earthquake resistance. Another thing which is important is reduced cracking. Cracking, as I have been discussing, reduces the bond between the reinforcement and concrete. So if we are able to reduce the cracks, automatically bond between the reinforcement and concrete will improve, and this will make us, or this will make the concrete more sustainable under the earthquake. This is what shows what excellent material fibers are. So this is what the without fiber photograph, if you see, under normal conditions, concrete will break like this because concrete is a very ductile material. Now, whenever we add fibers into it, so what will happen? There is a load transfer which is there from concrete to the fibers. Fibers are high strength material in comparison to the concrete. So whenever there is a higher loading and let us say concrete is not able to take that load, as it has happened in the first case. So without fiber, what has happened? Load was provided to the beam and beam just was not able to take that load and it has separated into two parts. So that is what is a brittle failure. But in case of fiber reinforced concrete, what will happen is as soon as concrete is not able to take the load, it will transfer that load to the fibers. And fiber being very high strength material, it will take that load. So in place of one crack becoming very big and the beam completely breaking, what will happen is there will be multiple transfer of loads from concrete to the fibers. So the at one location it will happen, then second and third, as can be seen in the figure or photograph below. So in that same load, but fibers have restricted the width of crack, and that is what is very important from the earthquake point of view. As soon as there is a big crack or as soon as the concrete falls off from the column, so column becomes very weak and vulnerable for failure. But in case of fiber reinforced concrete, what we observe, there may be failure of concrete, but that failure is now taken, or that load is now taken by the fibers, and because of that, falling of concrete from the reinforcement or complete crushing of concrete at a particular location, all these things will not happen, and hence structure will be able to sustain the loading at the better in a better way under the earthquake loading. So this is what is the benefit of fiber. Again here, the bond between the reinforcement means fiber and the concrete is very important. If bond is not proper, the fiber will debond from concrete and fiber reinforced concrete will fail. But if concrete is compacted properly, bond between fiber and reinforcement is good, fiber and concrete is good, it will perform or it will keep taking the load for a longer period, and that will be very useful. So this is all. So just to conclude, if we want to make a building earthquake resistant, all our focus should be towards making concrete good. So that is what is in the hands of a concrete engineer. If we make good concrete, bond with reinforcement will improve, and because of that we will see there is a very good performance of the concrete and reinforcement. For improvement of earthquake resistance of concrete, self-compacting concrete, fiber reinforced concrete, lightweight concrete is advisable. So this is something which we must use. Okay, so this is what in the brief time I just wanted to discuss. Now if you have, I think there are 2 questions. So any more questions are there? 3 questions, good.
Yes, sir. So it was a nice presentation that you have explained very minutely that how the small things that will affect the overall performance of the structure, and as far as the contribution of concrete is concerned, then what are the different options that can be incorporated so that we can have efficient structures. So thank you for that, and we'll take the questions. So first question is it is asked by Mr. Piyush Mehta. Sir, at site where the concrete is pumped and placed through boom placer equipment, high slump around 125 mm and high fall of height around 1.5 to 2 meters. what are the precautions we should take while designing the concrete mix during mixing the concrete and during placement and vibration of concretes?
Okay, this is Piyush. This is very good question actually, and that is what is there always at the site. See, when the concrete is falling from a height of 1.5 to 2 meters, that itself serves the purpose of compaction. But the only thing we have to take care of over here is that coarse aggregates should not separate from the total concrete. So here you can design it in such a way that viscosity of concrete is sufficient to hold the coarse aggregates. So there is, means having a slump of 125 mm is not bad if sufficient viscosity is provided by the cementitious material as well as mineral admixtures and fine aggregates. So we have to maintain the required cohesiveness in the concrete. Sometimes bleeding or segregation will happen because, as we all understand, coarse aggregate is the biggest material in the concrete and it has a very good specific gravity of around 2.7, 2.8. So with this specific gravity, it is having a tendency to fall first and rest of the material will fall later. So if all the concrete which we are putting into the column for casting, if that falls together, it will be a very, very good thing. So here we have to manage the viscosity. Concrete should be sufficiently viscous, and that is why in case of pumpable concrete, IS code has suggested 10% extra fine aggregate up to 10% extra fine aggregate for the concreting. So we have to see to it that bleeding is not happening, segregation is not happening. So that will serve the purpose. So in fact, putting it from a height is good from compaction point of view. I hope this answers your question.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Second question is from Kush. What is the behavior of FRP bar in structures in terms of earthquake resistant performance?
So FRP basically is designed for improving the earthquake resistance only. So FRP has very good bond with the concrete, and that is why FRP bars are suggested to be used for earthquake resisting design. But cost of FRP is very, very high. So from that point of view, we may not actually use that for normal constructions, but FRP as a bar, it is good for concrete construction.
Yeah. So it's a good option actually, but costlier. Yeah. The next question is in beam column junction where the chances of it to collapse due to earthquake is more. What to do other than using 10 mm aggregates, which is not used in practice? Means any other option?
Other option is generally you can go for fibers. So you can use fibers at that location. So what fibers will do is it will at least not allow the concrete to crack. So one portion we are able to avoid, and as there are multiple, means even we can vibrate the formwork. So that is a very difficult way to do it, but if that is possible, you can vibrate the formwork to have proper compaction at the beam column joint. So all these are unconventional. Easiest I should say is to use fibers, or people use 10 mm bar or something like that to compact the concrete. So all these are unconventional, that as well can be used.
Okay. Then does the plastering have any influence with sustainability of concrete?
Actually, I tell this to the students that in India, lot of very poor concretes which are produced, they survive just because of the plastic. So there is a concept that concrete will deteriorate when some aggressive environment will come in contact with the concrete. And from that point of view, plaster is one additional impermeable layer which we provide. So to make it short, yes, plaster will help to increase the durability of concrete structure. And if nicely done plaster is there, it will increase the life of concrete. Yes, this is good question, but again, we should not take it for granted that we are going to plaster the concrete, and because of that, we should compromise with the quality of concrete. It is not something like that.
Yeah, it's an additional advantage.
We can take additional advantage.
Yeah. Mhm. So next is the standard reference for fiber reinforced concrete design, or SCC. Which are the references, good references, code or something?
Self-compacting concrete, now the design is included in 10262. So self-compacting concrete, you can refer 10262. For fiber reinforced concrete, we do not have any code as such in India, though there are certain proposals, but I haven't seen any code in India for fiber reinforced concrete.
Yeah. Mhm. Okay. Then one is conceptual. Will there be any change in the size of column depending on different zone earthquake?
No, as I said, generally for earthquake resisting buildings, we should restrict the column width to 300. But again, it is not compulsion. But my suggestion always is, from earthquake point of view, it is better to restrict the column width to 300. But that width, a lot of owners don't like, because the columns will be seen in the rooms, and that is what is not aesthetically very good. But mostly 300 is minimum.
Yeah, correct. Then next question that we have is for mixing of fibers. Actually, many a times it happens that the fiber doesn't get mixed properly. So whether to have dry mix with the cement and then it is added with other ingredient, is there any efficient way for mixing, proper mixing?
No, what problem you have suggested is one of the most important reason why fibers are not very common. Here, what can be done is, there are certain high friction, or I should say high friction mixers which are available, but they are not available at the laboratory level. So the RMC plants which are there, they are having certain features wherein they provide a lot of friction within the mixing of concrete. So that friction actually can separate the fibers well. Also, we need to extend the time of mixing whenever we are mixing the fibers with it. What you have suggested, that is also right. We can have different ways to check which serves the best for the particular fiber. When we do it in the laboratory, what we do is we keep on adding fiber at intermittent time. Means at additionally we means initially we will add some portion, then after 1 minute we will add some portion. So this way we try to optimize it. But in I should say large quantity, the only possible is high friction mixers which are available in batch mixing plants.
Correct. So require some trials and experience for
Yes.
Yeah. So I think there are no other questions. So on behalf of Marwadi University, Marwadi Education Foundation and Atal Academy, I am again thankful to Dr. Shirish Dev for sparing his valuable time and sharing his experience. So what we can learn from this session is we need to see critically each and every aspect when we talk about concrete, and directly it is going to affect the structural performance. So segregation, if you talk about ingredients, if you talk about each and everything that is affecting directly, and the results of that we can observe after some years. So, and that may be disastrous. So due care is required while construction practices are going on. That could be the takeaway from the session. So I'm sure that this session is again helpful to the participants to understand the concrete and its application better. So thank you, sir. And if any other question is there from the audience, I will get it clarified from you through mails. Yeah. Hello.
Okay, so if there are no questions, so thank you once again,
Yeah.
Marwari University, Tarak sir, for giving this opportunity to me. And yes, as Tarak sir said, my information is available on our website. Anyone, if he has some queries, he can post it on the email. I will be happy to share my experience with them.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. And participants, we have the next session from structural consultant Mr. Devang Patel from Ahmedabad. He is an experienced consultant specifically for bridge design. So he'll be talking about basic conceptual aspects of the bridge, and then he will be discussing some failure cases, bridge failure cases in detail. So I request all the participants to take short break and join by the time it will start sharp at 11:15. So thank you, Dev sir again. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, sir. Okay. Yeah.